A thin rain fell over Washington, D.C., the kind that didn't pour so much as linger, soaking your cuffs and turning the air into a cold, metallic breath. The courthouse steps glistened like polished stone. People moved up and down them with folders pressed to their chests, their faces tight with private calculations. Jada Miles stood at the base of those steps with her umbrella closed at her side, letting the drizzle settle on her shoulders. She wasn't late. Jada had never been late to anything important in her life. Not to work, not to deadlines, not to promises. Today wasn't an appointment. It was a verdict waiting to happen. She had come to balance accounts, not beg for mercy today. She wore a navy sheath dress and a wool coat that ended just above her knees. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, braids tucked clean and firm. There was no softness in her appearance, nothing that begged for sympathy. If anyone looked at her and expected tears, they would have to keep waiting. The courthouse doors opened, and a gust of warm air rolled out, carrying the smell of old paper and cheap coffee. Voices echoed somewhere inside, muffled by hallways built for other people's endings. Jada inhaled once, steady, and stepped in. The security line moved slowly. A man in front of her kept checking his watch. A woman behind her clutched a tissue in one hand and her phone in the other. Jada kept her eyes forward. She felt the slow click of her pulse, not in panic, but in rhythm, like a clock that never missed. When she reached the metal detector, the guard barely glanced at her. He waved her through. The building swallowed her whole. The hallway outside courtroom 14 was painted an exhausted beige. The floor was dull tile polished by years of nervous footsteps. A row of wooden benches lined one wall, scarred with scratches from rings and keys and restless hands. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed, giving everything a faint, sickly sheen. Jada saw him before he saw her. Enzo Miles stood near the door like he belonged there, like the courthouse had been built for his performance. He wore a charcoal suit with a crisp white shirt, the kind of clean that had once made her proud. His tie was tied perfectly, a small knot he had learned from YouTube back when he still pretended to listen to her. He was tall, broad in the shoulders from the gym, and polished in the way men get when they believe the world has already agreed with them. Beside him, slightly behind his right shoulder, was Tiana Brooks. Tiana wasn't dressed for court. She was dressed to be seen. Her skirt was too short. Her lipstick was too bright. Her perfume drifted across the hallway like a dare. She leaned close to Enzo, as if her body had an ownership claim of its own, as if proximity could rewrite history. Jada's first thought was not anger. It was clarity. There she is, she thought. The receipt's ending. The hand in the photo. The smile that needed an audience. Enzo's head turned, and his face opened into that grin he used when he wanted to cut someone down without raising his voice. He looked relieved to see her, not because he missed her, because he wanted to watch her fold. He walked toward her with the easy swagger of a man who'd never had to pay the bill for his own arrogance. His shoes clicked sharply against the tile. Tiana followed, her heels tapping like punctuation. "Jada," Enzo said, drawing her name out as if it were a joke. "You actually showed up." Jada didn't answer. She didn't shift her weight. She didn't blink faster. She kept her face neutral, her gaze steady. In her mind, she placed his voice in a category. Background noise. Known essential. Enzo's smile twitched. He leaned in, lowering his voice the way people do when they want their cruelty to feel intimate. "Today," he said, "is the best day of my life." Tiana's mouth curved in a small, vicious smile. She looked Jada up and down, slow, assessing, as if measuring fabric and seams. Then she lifted her hand casually, letting the gold bracelet on her wrist catch the fluorescent light. Blue stones winked like tiny cold eyes. Jada felt something in her chest go still. Not broken, not bleeding, just sealed. Enzo continued, savoring it. "I'm taking everything from you," he said. "The condo, the accounts, the whole life you've been borrowing." He straightened, glancing around to make sure people were listening. He wanted witnesses. He needed them the way some men need mirrors. "Enzo," Jada said at last, and her voice surprised even her. It was calm. Low. Move. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a threat. It was instruction. For a second, Enzo looked confused. Then he laughed, loud enough for heads to turn. "Still doing that little quiet thing, huh?" he said. "You think silence makes you mysterious. It makes you forgettable." Tiana giggled, covering her mouth with manicured fingers, the bracelet flashing again. "Don't be mean," she purred, but there was poison in the sweetness. Maybe she just needs someone to explain it slow. Some women don't understand how the world works. Jada didn't look at the bracelet. She didn't need to. She had memorized it months ago, back when the sight of it had made her sit down on her own living room floor like her bones had suddenly decided to quit. A soft step came from behind her. A shadow settled beside her shoulder, steady and unhurried. Attorney Kendra Vaughn. Kendra was not tall, but she carried herself like a blade kept in a velvet case. She wore a black suit with clean lines, no jewelry except a simple watch. Her eyes were quiet, sharp, and old in the way experience makes you older than your years. Kendra didn't look at Enzo right away. She looked at Jada's face, as if checking her alignment. "You did everything exactly as I asked," Kendra said softly. "Yes," Jada replied. Kendra nodded once. "Then get ready," she said. He wanted a show. Enzo's grin widened. "Oh, good," he said, turning his attention to Kendra. "You must be the bargain attorney she found. Let me guess. You're going to beg for alimony and a sympathy check." Kendra's expression didn't change. "I'm going to let you talk," she said. "It's always the loud ones who confess first." Enzo scoffed. "Confess?" He pointed a finger, the gesture big and sloppy. "You don't know who you're dealing with. My lawyer's inside. He knows the judge. I've got this handled." Jada watched him, and the strangest thing happened. The man who had once felt like home now looked like a stranger trying on someone else's confidence. His certainty had edges, sharp and desperate. Kendra leaned slightly toward Jada. "Remember," she murmured, so only Jada could hear. "Silence isn't weakness. It's timing." Jada's fingers tightened around the handle of her bag. Inside, the weight of documents pulled at her shoulder with a quiet gravity. A folder, a notarized packet, a thumb drive. 3 months of proof arranged like chess pieces. Enzo didn't know that, of course. He still thought he was walking into a room where the universe would clap for him. The courtroom door opened and a clerk called out the case number, her voice flat with routine. People rose, gathered their papers, and filed inside. Enzo shifted, still smiling, still hungry for the moment he believed would crush Jada. He stepped close again and whispered, "After today, you're going to wish you'd taken the settlement. You're going to be nothing without me." Jada tilted her head slightly, studying him the way she used to study spreadsheets before an audit. She didn't hate him in that instant. Hate required heat, and she felt no heat. She felt a cold, clean understanding. "Nothing without him," he said, as if he had ever been the thing holding her up. She took one step forward, and Enzo moved back instinctively, startled by the fact that she was not shrinking, not even a little. "Let's go," Kendra said, calm as a door closing. Jada walked into courtroom 14 without looking at Tiana again. She didn't need to. She had already seen how this would end, the way a skilled accountant can see the true balance long before the numbers are printed. And if you're listening right now, don't go anywhere, because what happens next is where the trap finally snaps shut. Before we step deeper into this courtroom with Jada, tap the like button if you enjoy stories where quiet strength wins. And in the comments, tell me what time it is, where you are, and what city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. Jada took her seat on the hard wooden bench, coat folded neatly across her lap, hands resting on top. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and copier toner. Somewhere behind her, a man cleared his throat. A woman whispered to her sister. The sounds were small, ordinary, almost insulting in a place where lives were being cut in half. Enzo sat at the opposite table with his attorney, posture wide and relaxed. Tiana had been told to stay in the hallway, but Jada could still feel her presence out there, like perfume seeping under a door. Kendra Vaughn sat beside Jada without a single wasted motion, flipping open a legal pad and writing one line, then setting the pen down as if the rest could wait. Jada stared at the seal on the wall and let her mind slide backward, not because she wanted to relive it, but because that was how her brain worked. When something didn't add up, she rewound the tape. She found the first number that was wrong. Then she traced it forward until the whole scheme revealed itself. 3 months earlier, on a Tuesday in November, the rain had been heavier. Not a delicate drizzle like today, but a steady, soaking fall that turned streets into mirrors and made headlights look like blurred stars. Jada had been in their condo in Navy Yard, the one Enzo loved to call our place, with the proud emphasis of a man claiming a trophy. From the living room windows, the river looked slate gray, and the stadium lights across the way glowed dim through the weather. Their kitchen had always been Jada's territory. She liked clean counters, labeled jars, the quiet order of a home that ran on routines. Enzo liked the idea of that order, the way it made him feel taken care of, but he didn't respect the work behind it. He enjoyed the results the way some people enjoy electricity, without thinking about the wiring. That afternoon, Jada had been doing something simple. She was gathering his suits for the cleaners, the ones he wore on client days and company dinners, the ones she had steamed and brushed and hung with care. It wasn't romantic, it was maintenance. It was part of the life she believed they were building. 2 adults, 1 household, 1 future. She remembered pausing in the hallway with his jacket draped over her arm, listening to the shower running. Enzo was home early, which was rare lately. He'd said he had a strategy call that got canceled. He'd kissed her cheek, distracted, then disappeared toward the bathroom with his phone in his hand. Jada had checked his pockets the way she always did, out of habit and irritation. Enzo was notorious for leaving business cards, spare keys, or that black company badge in the lining. If she didn't check, she'd be the one hearing him curse at 6 in the morning while he tore through drawers. Her fingers found a folded piece of thick paper in the inner breast pocket. At first, she assumed it was a receipt from lunch or a parking garage. She unfolded it once, then again. The print was crisp. The store name was familiar in a distant way, like a place she'd passed but never entered. Marcelli & Co., a luxury jeweler in Georgetown. The time stamped in the corner read 2:37 p.m. The total sat on the page like an accusation. $4,980.16. Item, 18K gold tennis bracelet, blue topaz. Jada sat down on the edge of the sofa because her knees went soft, not with drama, but with the sudden realization that her body had been holding more tension than her mind admitted. She stared at the numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into something harmless if she waited long enough. At 2:37 p.m. yesterday, Enzo had texted her, "Stuck with Calder, running numbers, don't wait up." Calder Reed was his CEO, the man Enzo spoke about with rehearsed respect. Jada had believed that text because believing it cost her less than questioning it. She had been choosing the cheaper emotional option for months. The shower shut off. A cabinet door opened. Enzo hummed under his breath like nothing in his world had shifted. Jada folded the receipt back into quarters and slid it into her own pocket, because she was stabilizing. When her world started tilting, she reached for something solid. Evidence was solid. Paper was solid. Numbers were solid. That night, she didn't confront him. She cooked dinner, the kind he liked: salmon, roasted vegetables, lemon over everything. She listened while he talked about closing Q4 strong and big opportunities. She watched the way he checked his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. She watched the way he smiled down at the screen, soft and private, then cleared his throat and pretended he'd been reading an email. When he fell asleep, Jada lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, and she understood something with a clarity that felt almost cruel. She didn't know the man breathing next to her. She knew the version he performed in their home. She knew the version he sold to clients. But whatever life he was living outside those walls had its own script, and she was not in it. The next morning, she opened her laptop and did what she had done for years as an auditor. She followed the trail. Enzo assumed she didn't have access to his real accounts. He'd changed passwords after their first anniversary, claiming he'd been hacked. He'd turned on 2-factor authentication and laughed as if that made him a modern warrior. What he forgot was that he left his devices everywhere. What he forgot was that Jada organized their digital life the same way she organized their pantry. Their shared tablet sat on the kitchen counter like a forgotten remote control. One tap on the saved password vault, one face scan the device had already accepted months ago, and the doors opened. Jada didn't feel triumphant. She felt calm, like someone opening a file cabinet. First, she checked the obvious: the mortgage payments, the condo statement, the dates. Then she checked what Enzo never bothered to check: the incoming transfers. Jada had always contributed. She worked remotely as a bookkeeper and did consulting projects when she could. Enzo loved to say, "You don't have to stress. I've got us." She'd taken that as affection. Now she saw it for what it was: branding. Every month, on the 15th, Jada transferred a sum equal to the mortgage payment into Enzo's account. Memo: mortgage. Every single month. She had done it to support his pride, to let him click the final payment button and feel like a provider. She had done it because she believed partnership meant making room for each other's ego. Then she pulled up the purchase records from 5 years ago. The down payment had been substantial, and Enzo had always claimed it came from his grind. Jada remembered the truth, even if she had kept it tucked away like a fragile heirloom. The down payment had come from her Aunt Loretta's inheritance money. Loretta left her when she passed, money Jada never spoke about in detail, because in her family, you didn't advertise blessings. Enzo had urged her to wire it into his account for convenience, promising he'd send it to the developer in one clean transaction. Jada had trusted him. She'd signed, she'd smiled, she'd let him feel like the hero. Now, staring at the bank history, Jada saw the clean chain like a spine under skin: her inheritance deposit, her transfer to Enzo, his outgoing payment to the developer, same date, same amount. The kind of symmetry that only happens when the truth is sitting in plain sight. Her stomach tightened, not with heartbreak, but with anger at her own generosity. Not because giving was wrong, but because she had given to a man who treated her trust like a resource to be mined. She kept digging. The spending didn't match his salary, restaurant tabs that looked like rent, hotel charges in Miami on weeks he said he was in Baltimore, high-end boutiques, car rentals, and, buried among them like rot, a series of transfers to gambling platforms, amounts that rose in waves: 2,000, 5,000, 10. Jada leaned back in her chair and listened to the rain against the glass. In that sound, she heard the months of her own silence. She heard all the times she had swallowed suspicion to keep peace. And she realized peace, for Enzo, had never been mutual. Peace had been her staying quiet. By the end of that first week, Jada had done something she never expected of herself. She searched for Tiana Brooks. It took 2 minutes. Tiana's account was public, loud, curated for attention. Photos in candlelit restaurants, selfies in mirrored elevators, a champagne glass held in a manicured hand. And there it was, shimmering on her wrist, the same gold bracelet with blue stones, displayed like a flag. Caption: "Bae, don't play about me." Jada didn't cry. Her eyes stayed dry, but her throat felt tight, like her body was trying to choke back a scream her mind refused to release. She took a screenshot. Then another. She saved them into a folder and named it simply Proof. In the weeks that followed, Jada moved through her home like a ghost who still did the dishes. She smiled at Enzo when he spoke. She asked small questions at dinner. She played the role he expected because it kept him comfortable. And a comfortable liar always makes bigger mistakes. She built her case quietly, piece by piece, while Enzo planned a future that did not include her. By the time he announced he wanted a divorce and offered her a settlement like he was tossing a bone, Jada already knew the exact value of what he'd stolen. Back in courtroom 14, the judge's chair creaked as she settled in, and the room shifted into silence. Jada's eyes lifted from the wall seal to Enzo's face. He was still smiling. He had no idea what was about to walk out of Jada's bag. Not yet. The judge called the first case, then the second, and the courtroom settled into the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. It was the quiet of people waiting for pain with their mouths closed. Jada kept her eyes on the table in front of her. The wood was scratched in thin, nervous lines, like someone had tried to carve their way out of a bad decision. Kendra's legal pad sat to Jada's left, perfectly squared with the table edge. Enzo's attorney was whispering to him across the aisle, smiling too often, like a man who had never met a consequence he couldn't talk his way around. Jada let their voices blur. In her head, she was still in that first week after the receipt, when she learned the difference between being loved and being managed. She didn't confront Enzo because confrontation was loud, and loud was messy. Messy meant he would tighten his grip, hide his tracks, delete files, start acting careful. Jada needed him careless. She needed him comfortable. So she did what she had always done when something didn't make sense. She built a timeline. In the pantry off the kitchen, barely big enough for a vacuum and a few shelves, she pushed her cleaning supplies to the back and slid a small desk inside. It was one of those narrow, flat-packed desks she'd bought years ago for a temporary office that had turned into her quiet control room. She set up her laptop, a small printer, and a cheap desk lamp with a warm bulb that made the space feel less like a closet and more like a place where decisions got made. At night, when Enzo fell asleep, Jada would slip out of bed, step softly across the living room, and close the pantry door behind her. The condo would be dark and still, and the river outside would look like a long strip of black glass. In that small room, with the hum of the refrigerator faint in the distance, she became someone else. Not a wife, not a woman hoping for an apology. An auditor. She opened a new spreadsheet and named it the way she named every serious file at work. Plain, unemotional, undeniable. Ledger. Tab 1. Condo. Tab 2. Transfers. Tab 3. Enzo income declared. Tab 4. Enzo spending observed. Tab 5. Tiana. Tab 6. Gambling. Tab 7. Travel. Tab 8. Other. The last tab was for anything that made her stomach tighten in a way she couldn't explain yet. She started with the condo because that was the story Enzo told the loudest. I pay for everything. I built this. You live here because I allow it. She pulled the mortgage statements and the closing documents from the folder where she kept their important papers. Enzo never touched that folder. It bored him. Anything that didn't sparkle felt like a waste of time. The down payment sat there in black ink. The amount matched the inheritance deposit from Auntie Loretta's estate account down to the cent. Jada stared at it for a long time, not because she was confused, but because she finally understood what Enzo had been doing all along. He hadn't just cheated with a woman. He'd cheated the structure of their life. He'd used her trust as a ladder and then kicked it away. On paper, the payment to the developer came from Enzo's account. That was his whole argument. That was the costume he planned to wear in court. But Jada had the receipt for the truth. Her transfer to him 1 hour before the developer withdrawal. Same date, same amount. Memo line. Down payment, separate funds. She had written that memo without thinking much about it at the time. It was a habit, a professional reflex. You label a transaction, you leave a trail, you make it clean for whoever comes after you. She had been leaving a trail for herself. The next piece was slower. It wasn't one big dramatic deposit. It was the quiet drip of months. Every 15th. Jada's transfer. Every 16th. Mortgage drafted from Enzo's card. Sometimes she'd transferred from her consulting account, sometimes from the inheritance savings she'd tried to protect, but the numbers were consistent. The memo was consistent. The timing was consistent. It was, to Jada's trained eye, perfect. And that perfection made her angry, because it meant she had been responsible in a house that was being robbed. She printed the statements in batches and placed them into a binder. She added sticky tabs on the corners, 15th, 16th, memo, trace. At first, her hands shook as she turned the pages. Not from fear of being caught, but from the old ache of realizing the life she'd been careful with had been treated like spare change. But after a week, her hands stopped shaking. The ache didn't disappear. It turned colder, sharper, more useful. Once the condo story was solid, she moved to the part Enzo never expected her to touch, his spending. That was where the real marriage was hidden. Enzo's bank app listed transactions the way a person lists excuses. Short, vague, easy to dismiss if you didn't pay attention. Dining, travel, entertainment. But Jada didn't read labels. She read patterns. She pulled 3 months first, then 6, then 12. She built pivot tables, sorted by merchant, categorized by date, compared against his payroll deposits. She knew his official salary range. She had seen his W-2 seconds. She knew what a man making that money could do comfortably. This was not comfortable. This was bleeding. There were weeks where his spending doubled his take-home pay. weeks where he spent more on entertainment than they spent on groceries in a month. Enzo had always said he was investing in relationships. Jada watched the numbers and realized he was investing in fantasies. A cold night in late November, Jada sat in the pantry office and stared at a line item that made her throat go tight. $9,800. West Palm Resort. The date was a weekend he had told her he was in Richmond for a sales retreat. Jada remembered ironing that suit. She remembered packing his socks. She remembered standing at the door, smiling like a woman who believed her marriage was busy but intact. She clicked through the transaction details and found the confirmation email in his inbox. 2 guests. King Suite. Ocean view. She didn't breathe for a moment. Then she copied it into her folder. Proof. It was a strange thing, collecting evidence of your own humiliation. Each document felt like a small death, but the pile also felt like armor. Jada began to understand that betrayal wasn't one act. It was a system, a set of repeated choices, a habit of selfishness. Enzo was not a man who slipped once. He was a man who built an alternate life and financed it with the money he claimed proved his love. She checked the joint credit card next. There were charges she didn't recognize. Boutique names written in cursive, the kind of places you walk into when you want someone to think you belong there. Hair salons in neighborhoods Enzo never visited. A spa package purchased on a Tuesday at noon. Jada didn't ask how. She asked who. She opened Tiana's Instagram again, slower this time, like a detective revisiting a scene. She didn't just look at the bracelet. She looked at the backgrounds, the restaurants, the hotel mirrors, the angles that showed a glimpse of a ceiling light or a framed print. Geotags were a gift to people who needed the truth. Tiana had posted a photo from the wharf, leaning against a railing, hair styled like a promise. Behind her, a restaurant sign was reflected in the glass. The caption was something childish. Soft life only. Jada matched the date to Enzo's spending. $412 dinner at the same place. $78 valet. $1,320 hotel deposit. It was so simple it was insulting. That night, Enzo came home and kissed Jada's forehead, as if he hadn't just bought another woman a soft life. He said, "You okay, babe? You've been quiet." Jada smiled. "Just tired," she said. He believed her because he needed to. That was when she realized something else. Enzo's confidence was not strength, it was dependence. He depended on her silence to keep his world stable. So she gave him silence. And she let his world keep spilling. The gambling started as a footnote, a few small charges that looked like harmless bets. Jada almost dismissed them until she sorted by merchant and saw the truth. The amounts climbed like addiction. $500, $2,000, $4,000, $500, $10,000. Sometimes the payments hit at midnight, the hour when people make decisions they don't want daylight to see. Sometimes they hit on payday, when his account was full enough for him to feel brave. Jada pulled a calculator and added them up across 2 years. The total made her mouth go dry. 6 figures. Not invested. Not saved. Not spent on their home. Thrown into a digital hole, chasing a win that never came. She imagined Enzo alone somewhere, staring at a screen, eyes bright in the blue light, believing the next click would change his life. And she understood why he needed Tiana. Not because he loved her, because she looked like the life he thought he deserved. She was a distraction from the truth that he was losing. Jada's old love for him shifted into something flatter. He was not a villain in a movie. He was a man with a hunger and a weak spine. That combination ruined families quietly every day. The most dangerous part wasn't the mistress. It wasn't even the gambling. It was the arrogance. Enzo didn't hide well because he didn't believe he needed to. One afternoon, while he was at the gym, Jada logged into his email again. She had tried not to at first. It felt like crossing a line. But then she remembered his line, "Today's the best day of my life. I'm taking everything from you," and she realized the line had been crossed long ago. She was just late in noticing. His password was his birthday. No symbols, no complexity. For a man who bragged about security, he was careless in the places that mattered. His inbox looked normal. Client chains, team meetings, motivational quotes from coworkers. But Jada had learned a simple truth in auditing. The story lives in what people try to throw away. She clicked into archive, then trash. And there it was. A thread titled Revised Invoice. It included a PDF invoice for a client, the amount inflated. Below it, an email from a supplier. As discussed, your portion will be sent to D. Harris. Jada blinked slowly. D. Harris was a name she recognized from Enzo's stories. Darius Harris, an old friend from high school, the guy Enzo claimed was always hustling. Jada had met him once at a cookout years ago. He had smiled too wide and asked too many questions about Enzo's job. The email thread continued, messy and casual, like men who believed they were untouchable. Make sure it hits by Friday. Same split as last time. Don't use the usual account. Jada sat back, feeling the room tilt slightly. Not because she didn't understand, because she understood too well. This wasn't just about her marriage. This was about Enzo's entire identity. He didn't just lie to Jada. He lied to his company. He lied to the IRS. He lied to himself. And if he was willing to steal at work, he was absolutely willing to steal from her. Jada printed the emails. Then she printed the invoices. Then she matched the dates to his bank deposits. Odd little transfers labeled gift or repayment, arriving right after large client deals closed. She created a new column in the spreadsheet called Source and another called Risk. Under Risk, she didn't write maybe or probably. She wrote numbers, low, medium, high, catastrophic, because in her world, risk was not a feeling. It was a measurable thing that could swallow a person whole if they pretended it didn't exist. On a Thursday night, while the condo slept, Jada opened Enzo's cloud storage. He kept everything in one place the way messy men do. Receipts, old photos, work documents, scanned IDs. A digital junk drawer. He thought the cloud was safe because it was invisible. He forgot that invisible things still have doors. She found a folder titled Harris. Inside were spreadsheets Enzo hadn't meant to keep at home, columns of client names, invoice amounts, and a smaller column labeled Split. Another file had the word clean in its title. Another had Q3 bonus, even though it clearly wasn't a bonus. It was a map of how money moved when people thought no one was watching. Jada's throat tightened, but her hands stayed steady. She took screenshots, then exported the files and saved them to an encrypted drive. She did not email them. She did not print them yet. Those documents carried heat. They needed to be handled the way you handle something volatile, with gloves, with distance, with a plan. Then she did something she hadn't expected to do in her own home. She listened. There was a voice memo file in the folder, a recording. Jada clicked play, and Enzo's voice filled the pantry office. Low and casual, like he was talking about weekend plans. Yeah, D, Enzo said. Just run it through the usual. Don't make it look like a straight transfer. Put we're payment like last time. And don't send it to my main account this week. I'm keeping my balance clean for court. The words landed in Jada's chest like a cold stone. For court, he said it so smoothly, like court was just another meeting he needed to prepare for, like he was scrubbing his finances the way he scrubbed his public image. The recording continued. Darius laughed in the background, a thick, lazy sound. Man, you really divorcing her? Darius asked. Yeah, Enzo replied. She's quiet, but she's not dumb. I need her gone before she starts asking questions. Jada's mouth went dry, not because she was afraid he would hurt her, but because she realized he was afraid of her mind. He had been afraid long before she was. He just hid it better. The memo ended with Enzo saying, after the hearing, we celebrate. I'm moving my girl in. Navy Yard living, baby. Jada sat still in the pantry office, the laptop glow reflecting off her knuckles. The condo was silent around her, and in that silence, she felt something shift again. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even rage. It was a kind of calm that comes when you stop needing the truth to be kind. She added a note in the spreadsheet under Other. Voice memo, court cleaning, move Mistress in. Then she stood up and walked to the kitchen, and she stared at the countertop like it belonged to a stranger. The same place she'd chopped onions for him, the same sink she'd washed his wine glasses in, the same floor she'd mopped on Sunday mornings while he slept in. It all looked normal. That was the dangerous part. Betrayal doesn't always change the furniture. Sometimes it only changes the air. The next day, Enzo came home in a mood, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door and asking what was for dinner. Jada watched him, listened to his tone, and realized she had started hearing his lies like she heard bad music. Not painful, just obvious. Over the following weeks, she treated her investigation like a second job, but one with higher stakes than any client audit she'd ever done. She requested certified bank statements through official channels instead of downloading them because she knew how easy it was for someone like Enzo's lawyer to claim something had been altered. That meant trips to the bank. Jada went on weekday mornings, dressed like someone with errands, not war. The downtown branch was cool and quiet, the kind of space designed to make you feel small in front of money. She sat at a desk with a banker named Miss Linton, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and reading glasses that dangled on a chain. Miss? Linton spoke softly, like she had seen 1,000 private collapses and learned not to react. "You need certified copies for what dates?" Miss Linton asked. Jada slid her list across the desk. "These ranges," she said. "And the transfer confirmations." Miss Linton glanced at the list, then at Jada's face. Her eyes softened slightly, not with pity, but with recognition. "Divorce?" she asked, not judgmental, just practical. Jada didn't answer directly. She said, "I need accuracy." Miss Linton nodded like that was the most honest response she'd heard all day. "You'll get it," she said. "It takes a few days." Walking out of the bank, Jada felt the rain on her cheeks and realized she hadn't checked her phone for an hour. Enzo had texted twice. "Where you at? You good?" He was watching her. Not closely, but enough to be annoying. Jada typed back, "Groceries. Long line, see you later." She made sure to stop at an actual grocery store. She bought milk, bread, and the kind of snacks Enzo liked. She kept the receipt. She kept her story believable. That was the part no one tells you about war. Sometimes you still have to buy cereal. There were close calls. One night, while Jada was printing a set of statements, the pantry door handle rattled. Her heart jumped once, sharp and fast, then steadied. Enzo's voice came through the wood. "Babe?" he called. "You in there?" Jada froze, hand hovering over the power button. The printer hummed softly, almost like it was breathing. In that moment, she understood why people panic. Panic is the body trying to escape a threat. Jada did not escape, she controlled. She clicked the printer off. She slid the papers into her binder. She opened the pantry door with a calm smile. "What's up?" she asked. Enzo stood there in a t-shirt, hair damp from the shower, looking irritated. "Why are you in the pantry?" he said, like her privacy was an inconvenience. Jada shrugged. "I'm organizing," she said. "We have too much junk." Enzo rolled his eyes. "You always doing something?" he muttered. "Come watch this show with me." Jada walked past him and thought, "You have no idea what I'm watching." Another night, Enzo came home unexpectedly early, and Jada found herself sliding her laptop under a stack of paper like a teenager hiding a diary. She hated that feeling, the sense that she was sneaking around in her own life. But she reminded herself, she wasn't doing this for drama. She was doing it for survival. In December, Enzo grew bolder. His phone calls were louder. His laughter felt staged. He stopped apologizing for late nights. He started acting like the condo already belonged to him alone. And then there was the bracelet. On a Saturday morning, Jada saw it in person for the first time. Enzo had insisted she meet him for a talk at a coffee shop near the wharf. He chose the place, of course, a sleek spot with tall windows and overpriced pastries. Jada arrived early, ordered black coffee, and took a seat where she could see the door. Enzo walked in 10 minutes later with Tiana, not holding hands, not kissing, just together, like a message. Tiana's hair was glossy, her coat a bright color that demanded attention. And on her wrist, the blue topaz bracelet shimmered under the cafe lights. Jada didn't react. She didn't even look away. She let her gaze rest on the bracelet for one clean second, then she lifted her eyes to Enzo's face. Enzo smirked, satisfied. "I thought it was time you accepted reality," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. "This is Tiana." Tiana smiled like she was biting into something sweet. "Hi," she said. "I've heard so much about you." Jada kept her voice even. "I'm sure you have." Enzo leaned back. "We're not here for drama," he said, lying. "I'm giving you one more chance to be smart. Take the settlement. 25,000. That's more than generous." Jada took a slow sip of coffee. The bitterness hit her tongue, steadying. "No," she said. Tiana's smile flickered. "Girl," she said softly, "why make this hard? You're young. You can start over. Jada looked at her, really looked. Tiana's eyes were bright and hungry, but behind them was something else, fear. Not fear of Jada, fear of losing the life she'd been promised. Jada's voice stayed calm. You're confusing hard with honest, she said. Enzo's jaw tightened. Okay, he said, then we go to court. And you lose. Jada set her cup down. We'll see. The way she said it made Enzo pause. A small pause, but real. He had spent years believing Jada's quiet meant she didn't have teeth. In that pause, he sensed something he couldn't name, that she might have been watching him the whole time. Tiana covered it with a laugh, but her laugh sounded thin. As they stood to leave, Enzo leaned close and said, I'm moving her in right after the hearing. Clear out your closet. Jada watched them walk out together, and she felt a coldness spread through her chest like frost, not because she was jealous, because she realized he intended to erase her, not just leave, replace, occupy her space like she had never mattered. That was when she decided the settlement was not just unfair, it was insulting. She went home, opened her binder, and started preparing a second one. Dissipation. Receipts. Hotel confirmations. Screenshots. A careful list of total marital funds wasted on gambling and gifts. Because if Enzo wanted to rewrite history, she would hand the judge the original draft. It was so crude it almost made her laugh. Enzo was not a mastermind. He was a man who had gotten away with being average for so long that he mistook luck for intelligence. In December, Enzo announced at dinner that he wanted a divorce. He said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather. This isn't working, he told her, twirling his fork. We grew apart. Jada looked at him across their table. The one she had picked out. The one she had dreamed of setting, with holiday plates and children's cups. She waited for him to show regret. He showed relief. I'm offering you something fair, he continued. 25 grand, you walk away. No drama. Tiana's name wasn't mentioned, but it floated in the room like smoke. Jada could smell it. Fair, Jada repeated softly. Enzo nodded, pleased with himself. You're not going to win anything in court. You know that, right? I paid for the condo. I've got records. I have a real lawyer. Jada didn't correct him. She didn't argue. She swallowed the urge to throw the receipt at his face. Instead, she asked, when is the hearing? Enzo smirked. Soon, he said. Don't worry. I'll handle it. That night, after he fell asleep, Jada went into the pantry office and looked at the binder of evidence on her desk. It was thick now, heavy, the kind of heavy that changes your posture when you lift it. She understood something with a quiet dread. Evidence was power, but it had to be used correctly. She needed a strategist. That was when she called her cousin Patrice, the only person in her family she trusted with the uglier truths. Patrice listened without interrupting, then said, You need Kendra Vaughn. Jada had heard the name once, in the way people whisper about certain attorneys like they're storms you don't want to stand under. Kendra Vaughn, Patrice said, didn't do messy. She did precise. Their meeting took place in a small office near DuPont Circle, a building with thick glass doors and a lobby that smelled like lemon cleaner. The receptionist barely smiled. Everything about the place was controlled. Kendra greeted Jada with a firm handshake and a look that didn't waste time. Tell me the facts, she said. So Jada did. She laid out the timeline, the inheritance, the transfers, the spending, the gambling, the mistress, the work emails. She didn't cry. She spoke like she was presenting a report, because that was the only way she could stay steady. Kendra listened with her hands folded, her face unreadable, eyes moving like a scanner. When Jada finished, Kendra opened the binder and flipped through the pages slowly. For a long time, she didn't speak. The only sound was the soft turn of paper. Finally, Kendra looked up. You're an auditor, she said. A bookkeeper now, Jada replied. Kendra's mouth tightened slightly. Not a smile, something like approval. A bookkeeper doesn't build a file like this, she said. An auditor does. Jada waited. Kendra leaned back in her chair. Here's the truth, she said. In family court, people lie because they think the court runs on emotion. It doesn't. It runs on evidence and credibility. Jada nodded. And your husband, Kendra continued, has been rehearsing his story. He will come in loud, confident. He will bring that girl with him to unbalance you. He will try to make you look small. Jada's gaze stayed steady. I won't be small. Kendra tapped the binder lightly. "Good," she said, "because we're not going to play defense. We're going to let him talk himself into a corner." Jada's throat tightened. "How?" "Timing," Kendra said. "We show the condo tracing first. We establish separate property. Then we show dissipation, gambling, and mistress spending. Then, if necessary, we hint at the corporate fraud." Jada's stomach shifted. "Hint?" Kendra's eyes cooled. "Family court isn't criminal court," she said. "But judges don't like being lied to. And they don't like spouses who drain marital assets for selfish reasons. The fraud material, that's leverage. Not to be reckless, to be protected." Protected. That word landed on Jada's chest like a weight and a relief at the same time. Kendra slid a legal pad toward her. On it were 3 rules written in clean block letters. 1. No reactions. 2. No speeches. 3. No mercy until the order is signed. Jada read them twice. Then she nodded. Over the next weeks, they prepared like 2 people training for a storm. Kendra had Jada notarize key documents, the inheritance records, the transfer memos, the statement chains. They requested certified copies from the bank, a step Enzo would never think to do because it required patience and respect for process. They rehearsed court day the way actors rehearse a play, except the goal wasn't applause. It was control. "What will he say?" Kendra asked one afternoon. "He'll say he paid for everything," Jada replied. "And what will you do?" "Nothing," Jada said. "I'll look at him like he's talking to someone else." Kendra nodded. "Good. He needs your attention like oxygen. Starve him." Sometimes, late at night, when Jada sat in the pantry office alone, she felt the urge to break down. Not because she missed Enzo, but because she missed who she had been before she learned what he was. There is a grief in losing your own innocence. But every time she felt it, she opened the spreadsheet again. She looked at the memo lines, she looked at the dates, she looked at the clean logic of truth, and the grief hardened into purpose. In early January, Enzo started coming home with a glow he didn't bother to hide. He hummed as he changed clothes. He smiled into his phone. He treated Jada like she was already in his past. One night, he stood in the kitchen while she washed dishes and said, "I'm going to keep the condo." Jada didn't turn around. "We'll see." Enzo laughed. "No," he said. "You'll see. You should start packing." Jada rinsed a plate and set it on the rack. "Okay." That single word made him pause. He wanted a fight. He wanted her to plead. Her calm was a mirror he didn't like looking into because it reflected something he refused to admit. "Don't act like you're fine," he snapped. "You're nothing without me." Jada dried her hands. She turned slowly and met his eyes. "Enzo," she said evenly, "I've been fine." His expression tightened, then smoothed. He swallowed it and went back to his phone. He couldn't afford to lose his performance. Not yet. The night before the hearing, Enzo left early, claiming he needed to prep with his lawyer. Jada watched him grab his coat, watched him pat his pocket to make sure his car keys were there, watched him smile at his reflection in the hallway mirror like a man about to win a prize. When the door closed, the condo fell into a silence that felt heavy, like a hand pressing down. Jada went into the pantry office and looked at her binder one last time. She checked each tab, each statement, each notarized stamp. It was all there. Her phone buzzed. A message from Kendra. "Sleep. Tomorrow is about patience." Jada stared at the words. Sleep felt impossible. Her body was wired with a calm kind of electricity, the kind that comes right before a hard truth finally speaks. She walked to the window and looked out at the river. The city lights shimmered on the water like broken jewelry. Tomorrow, she thought, he will learn what it costs to underestimate a quiet woman. In the morning, she got dressed with the same careful precision she used to organize numbers. Navy dress, minimal makeup, a coat that fit, shoes that didn't click too loudly, no perfume. She didn't want to announce herself. She wanted to arrive like a fact. She drove to the courthouse through gray streets, wipers moving in steady arcs. She parked, sat for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel, and breathed. Not deep, not dramatic, just enough to remind her body she was still in control. In the lobby, Jada paused beside a bulletin board covered in faded notices, the kind no one read until they needed them. Her reflection stared back from the dark glass of a framed poster. Calm face, steady eyes, a woman who looked like she belonged in any professional room. Underneath that calm, she felt the old life peeling away, strip by strip. Kendra met her near the elevators, not rushed, not early, just exact. She handed Jada a single sheet labeled Exhibits and said, "If he provokes you, let him. If he lies, let him. Your silence is the rope." Somewhere down the hall, Enzo's laugh cracked through the air, loud and careless. Jada didn't flinch. She only tightened her grip on her bag. "Ready?" Kendra asked. Jada nodded once. "Then we walk in," Kendra said, "and we let the math speak, so all hear." When she stepped inside, she saw Enzo and Tiana, polished and smug, waiting by courtroom 14 like predators near a weak animal. And now, sitting in the courtroom, watching Enzo smile as if he had already won, Jada felt something settle in her chest. Not fear, a quiet certainty. Because she didn't need him to understand her, she only needed the judge to see the truth. And the truth, unlike Enzo, didn't need to be loud to be powerful. Kendra rose without hurry, as if time belonged to her. The courtroom smelled of dust and copier toner, and the fluorescent lights flattened every face into the same tired shade. It was the kind of room where people tried to sound brave while their lives quietly broke. Across the aisle, Enzo sat with his attorney, Darnell Pierce. Enzo's posture was wide, relaxed, rehearsed. He kept his chin lifted like he'd already won. Jada didn't look at him for long. Staring at a lie too much only gives it oxygen. Out in the hallway, Jada could still catch a faint trace of Tiana's perfume when the door opened and closed. Sweet, expensive, trying too hard. It floated into the courtroom for a second, then vanished, the way Tiana always did when consequences arrived. Jada didn't need to see her to know she was out there, scrolling on her phone, rehearsing a victory smile for the cameras she imagined waiting outside. Jada sat with her spine straight and her breathing shallow and steady. Inside her bag was a thick binder, edges squared, tabs aligned, documents in an order that told a story without adjectives. She could feel the weight of it against her thigh, not heavy in a physical way, but heavy like responsibility. 3 months earlier, she would have called it overkill. In this life, it was insurance. Pierce stood first, smooth as polished wood. "Your Honor," he began, "this is a straightforward divorce and an equitable distribution matter. My client, Lorenzo Miles, is the primary breadwinner. He purchased the marital residence, he has paid the mortgage, and the defendant's recent work has been limited. We request that the court award the residence to Mr. Miles or, in the alternative, divide it in his favor. We also request that Mr. Miles's accounts, earned through his labor, be recognized as separate." He spoke about reality, the way men speak about reality when it benefits them. He mentioned a generous settlement, implied Jada was bitter, and sat down with a satisfied little nod. The judge listened without reacting, pen moving, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. When Pierce finished, she set her pen down and looked toward the defense table. "Counselor Vaughn," she said. Kendra Vaughn stood like a door closing. Black suit, clean lines, no jewelry except a plain watch. Her voice was calm enough to feel cold. "Your Honor," she said, "the plaintiff's story is loud, but it is not true. We will address the residence first, because the plaintiff's entire claim rests on a false foundation." Enzo made a small sound through his nose, amused. Kendra didn't look at him. She slid a certified bank statement to the clerk. "Exhibit A," she said. "A deposit into the defendant's account from the estate of Loretta Gaines. $140,000. Date: 1 month before the condo purchase." Enzo's smile tightened. The first crack. Kendra turned the page. Exhibit B. A transfer from Jada Miles's account to Lorenzo Miles's account on the same day as the closing payment. Memo line: down payment, separate funds. Timestamp: 10/12/A. Pierce half rose. "Your Honor." Kendra kept going. Exhibit C. A withdrawal from Lorenzo Miles's account to the developer. Timestamp: 11/6/A. M amount: $140,000. The judge's eyes moved line by line, then lifted. Continue. The judge took a few seconds longer on the memo line than on the numbers, as if she understood what it meant for a spouse to label a transfer that clearly. That single phrase, "separate funds," was not just a note. It was a boundary drawn in ink, years before anyone used the word divorce. Jada watched the judge's eyes move, then pause, and she felt the strange satisfaction of seeing her past self finally rewarded for being careful. Enzo's leg began to bounce under the table, fast and unconscious, a nervous habit he couldn't hide now that his mouth wasn't controlling the room. He looked toward Pierce like a man waiting for a rescue plan. Pierce's lips pressed into a thin line. Kendra's tone stayed even. Inheritance is separate property. When the trace is clear, the asset purchased with those funds remains separate. This trace is clear down to the memo line. Pierce stood fully now. Your Honor, the funds went into my client's account. That's commingling. That's intent. Kendra turned her head slightly, the smallest movement. Commingling requires the loss of traceability, she said. There is no loss here. As for intent, the defendant stated it at the time of transfer. In writing, the judge didn't smile, but her posture changed. She was listening differently now. Kendra opened a second packet. Now the mortgage. She handed over a summary chart and a stack of statements. Exhibit D, 36 months of transfers. Each month, on the 15th, Jada Miles transferred the exact mortgage amount into Mr. Miles's account. Memo line, mortgage. On the 16th, the mortgage drafted. Every month, no gaps. Kendra didn't just hand over papers. She built a staircase for the judge to climb, step by step, from suspicion to certainty. First, the inheritance, then the transfer, then the payment. 3 simple steps that left no room for imagination. Then the monthly pattern, repeated like a metronome, until he paid turned into she funded. Every earlier detail Jada had once considered small, the memo habit, the timing, the saved statements now stood up in court and spoke for her. That was the part that felt almost surreal. The quiet life she'd lived, the chores, the transfers, the careful notes, all suddenly mattered in public. Jada kept her hands folded, shoulders still. She could feel Enzo's attention scraping at her, desperate for a reaction, anger, tears, anything he could call weakness. She gave him nothing. Pierce's voice lost its shine. Those transfers could be household contributions. The judge interrupted, calm and direct. Counselor, do you have evidence the certified statements are inaccurate? No, Your Honor. Do you have evidence the memo lines were fabricated? No, Your Honor. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. The courtroom felt colder after that. Not physically, but morally, as if the air itself had decided what kind of man sat at the plaintiff's table. Jada noticed little things. How Pierce stopped looking the judge in the eye. How Enzo's hands kept wiping at his palms on his suit pants. How his breathing changed when Kendra said the word dissipation. He had walked in expecting applause. He was getting arithmetic. Jada's mind stayed oddly quiet. She wasn't reliving the betrayal. She wasn't replaying the receipt, the screenshots, the late nights. She was watching the payoff. Every time Enzo had called her quiet, boring, replaceable, every time he'd underestimated her had brought him here, to a room where precision mattered more than swagger. It felt less like revenge and more like balance, like the world finally adding up. Kendra opened a third folder, thicker, tabbed in clean colors. Your Honor, the plaintiff also claims he supported the marriage with his income. His own records show something else. She placed a chart in front of the judge. Exhibit E, gambling transactions on the plaintiff's personal accounts. DraftKings, offshore sportsbooks, crypto casino transfers, repeated over 2 years. Total documented losses, $106,340. A low murmur moved through the benches. Someone inhaled sharply. Pierce jumped up, voice strained. Entertainment expenses, Your Honor. Client relations. Sit down, the judge said, not loud, but final. Pierce sat. The judge looked at Enzo. Mr. Miles, she said, do you dispute these transactions? Enzo tried to stand and failed halfway, fingers gripping the table edge. No, he said. His voice sounded thin, like it didn't belong to him. But it was networking. Kendra's eyes stayed on the judge. Clients gamble on your personal accounts at midnight? She asked softly. Clients need crypto casinos? Enzo swallowed. No answer. Kendra turned a page. Exhibit F. Third-party expenditures. She didn't say Tiana's name first. She said what mattered. Airfare for 2 to West Palm Beach. Hotel suite, 2 guests. Boutique purchases in women's size small. spa services, jewelry. Then she lifted the Georgetown receipt, crisp and undeniable. Gold bracelet with blue topaz, $4,980. Enzo's eyes darted to Jada's face again, hunting. Jada's expression stayed flat, like a closed account. Kendra added one last piece, almost gently, and a social media post from Miss Tiana Brooks the same evening, wearing the bracelet, captioned, "Bae don't play about me." The transaction is the foundation. The post confirms the recipient. Pierce's objection came too late and too weak. The judge was already looking at the receipt, then at Enzo. "Mr. Miles," she said, "were marital funds used for these expenditures?" Enzo's mouth opened. Pierce stared at his notes like he'd been abandoned. Finally, Enzo spoke, voice cracking. "Yes." The judge's expression didn't change, but something colder settled into the room. "And did your spouse consent?" Enzo's eyes flicked toward Jada. She didn't move. "No," he admitted. Kendra closed the folder. "The total dissipation documented," she said, "including gambling and third-party expenditures, is $181,000. The defendant requests reimbursement of half." Jada felt her heartbeat once, slow and heavy, not triumph, relief, like a painful tooth finally pulled. Kendra paused, then placed a sealed envelope and a small black thumb drive on the table. She didn't slide them to the judge yet. She let them sit where Enzo could see them. "One additional matter," Kendra said. "The plaintiff's claimed income does not align with his expenditures. The defendant, as a professional auditor, located evidence of unreported income and questionable business practices. We are not asking this court to make criminal findings. We note the evidence as it relates to credibility and claimed contribution." Pierce shot up. "Objection. Beyond scope. Prejudicial." The judge lifted a hand. "Counselor Vaughn," she said, "are you submitting those materials today?" Kendra's voice stayed level. "Not unless the court requires it. Our position stands without them." The judge nodded once. It was a small motion, but it changed the air. The leverage had done its job. Enzo stared at the thumb drive like it was alive. The judge turned to Pierce. "Counselor, do you have any evidence that contradicts the tracing, the transfer pattern, or the dissipation totals?" Pierce's throat moved as he swallowed. "No, Your Honor, we dispute the interpretation." "The interpretation is supported by the numbers," the judge said. "Numbers are not emotional." Then she looked directly at Jada. "Miss Miles, did you consent to the gambling and third-party expenditures?" Jada's voice was quiet and clear. "No, Your Honor." "Did you transfer the mortgage amounts as shown?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge's gaze returned to Enzo. "Mr. Miles," she said, "do you have anything else to add before I rule?" Enzo stood on legs that didn't trust him. He fumbled with his tie. His suit looked expensive, but the man inside it looked small. "I worked," he said, voice rising with panic. "I worked for this life. I was the man. I did what I had to do." Kendra didn't interrupt. She let him pour out words until he ran out of air. The judge watched him, then looked down at her notes. When she spoke again, her voice was flat with certainty. "I have heard enough. The court will take a short recess to review the exhibits and issue a ruling." Her gavel tapped once, not loud, final. During the recess, Jada stayed seated. She listened to the small mechanics of the courthouse, the clerk's muted footsteps, paper sliding in folders, a distant elevator bell. Other couples drifted in and out, faces tight, hands clenched around hope. Jada felt no hope. She felt structure. Every memo line, every transfer date, every receipt had led to this chair, this silence, this moment where Enzo could not talk his way out of math. Across the aisle, Enzo whispered to Pierce, but it sounded like static. When the judge returned, everyone stood. The room snapped back into silence. She sat, adjusted her glasses, and began reading without preamble. "On the issue of the marital residence," she said, "the court finds clear and convincing evidence that the down payment was made with traceable separate property and that the defendant's transfer history supports her contribution. The residence is awarded to the defendant as separate property and is not subject to equitable distribution." Enzo's head dipped, like the words had weight. "On the plaintiff's request for division of the defendant's accounts," the judge continued, The request is denied for lack of supporting evidence. Pierce's shoulders dropped. On dissipation, the judge said, the court finds the plaintiff expended marital funds on gambling and third-party expenditures without the defendant's consent. The court awards the defendant reimbursement of half the documented dissipation in the amount of $90,570. A small sound escaped Enzo, half gasp, half choke. The vehicle, the judge continued, remains with the plaintiff, who will assume the associated debt in full. She paused, eyes lifting. This court does not punish people for divorcing, she said. It does not reward deception and waste. Court is adjourned. The gavel tapped again. Jada felt her body release in a way so quiet it almost went unnoticed. She stood, gathered her coat, lifted her bag, and walked out with Kendra beside her. The hallway light looked brighter, not warmer, just clearer. Behind them, Enzo stumbled out, voice breaking as it chased her down the corridor. "Jada," he croaked. "Wait!" She didn't turn, not because she couldn't hear him, because today, for the first time in a long time, she was choosing a different sound, the clean click of a ledger closing. Jada didn't stop when Enzo called her name. She kept walking, heel to tile, breath steady, coat brushing her knees, as if the corridor were just another office hallway and not the place where her marriage finally collapsed in public. Behind her, Enzo's voice scraped again. "Jada, please." The word "times, please, times" sounded foreign in his mouth, like a suit borrowed from a man with manners. They reached the double doors leading to the main lobby. The courthouse air was warmer there, thick with body heat and stale coffee. People shuffled past with swollen eyes and crumpled paperwork. Life continued, indifferent. Enzo caught up at the edge of the lobby, tie loosened, the shine gone from his confidence. "You did this," he said, trying for anger, landing on panic. "You set me up." Jada stopped at last, turning just enough to face him without offering him the full attention he craved. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from tears, but from shock. "You set yourself up," she said quietly. "I just stopped covering for you." He swallowed hard. "Where am I supposed to go now? I don't have the condo. I owe you money. I don't even have cash on me." Jada watched him the way she would watch a number that didn't balance, not with hate, but with certainty. "That's what happens when you spend tomorrow's security on today's ego," she said. "You don't get to complain about the bill." Enzo's voice dipped, almost childlike. "Tiana's out there. She's waiting. Tell her it's not that bad." Jada didn't answer. As if on cue, the courthouse doors swung open, and Tiana swept into the lobby, phone in hand, lipstick perfect, eyes sharp with impatience. She scanned Enzo's face once, then the papers in his hand. Her expression shifted from victory to calculation. "Well?" she snapped. "Did we get it?" Enzo's mouth worked. "We didn't," he said. "It's her condo, and I owe her." Tiana stared at him like he'd turned into something she didn't order. "So you're broke," she said flatly. "And you're in trouble. I can fix it," Enzo pleaded. "Just give me a minute." Tiana took a slow step back. "No," she said. "You'll figure it out." She lifted her wrist, the blue stones flashing under the lobby lights. "And don't ask me for that bracelet. Consider it my severance." Enzo reached for her arm. "Tiana, wait." She pulled away as if his touch burned. "I don't do losing," she said, and walked out, heels clicking like a countdown. The doors swallowed her, and the perfume disappeared with her. Enzo stood there, empty. His phone rang, loud and cheerful, and the sound made him flinch. The screen lit up, Calder Reed. Enzo answered with shaking fingers. "Mr. Reed?" Jada didn't hear the CEO's words, but she watched Enzo's expression crumble in real time. Confusion, then fear, then a kind of silent begging. His shoulders caved. When the call ended, Enzo stared at the dead screen. "I'm fired," he whispered. Kendra's voice was low at Jada's side. He earned that, too. Enzo looked up at Jada, eyes wet now. "You sent it," he said. "You sent him the file." Jada didn't deny it. "I sent the truth to the people you lied to," she replied. "I'm not responsible for what the truth costs you." "Please," Enzo said again, "just don't push it further. I'll pay you." Jada held his gaze, steady and unromantic. "You will," she said, "because the court ordered it." She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "And after today, "You're not my problem." She turned away, and this time she didn't stop again. Outside, the rain had thinned. A pale strip of sun cut through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into a bright mirror. Jada breathed in the cold air and felt something unfasten inside her ribs. Not joy like fireworks, joy like silence after a long alarm. On the courthouse steps, Kendra shook her hand once, firm. "You did the hard part," she said. "You stayed calm when he wanted you loud." Jada's mouth curved, small. "I did the math," she answered. "It was overdue." Kendra's eyes softened by a fraction. "Go home," she said. "Change the locks. Change the story." Then she turned and walked away, already done with Enzo's name. Jada crossed the parking lot with the drizzle tapping her coat. In her car, she sat for a moment before starting the engine, hands resting on the steering wheel like she was holding herself steady on purpose. Her phone buzzed one new text from Enzo, a string of frantic words she didn't read. She blocked the number, and the world got quieter. At a red light, Jada pictured Auntie Loretta in her church hat, always saying, "Keep receipts. Folks will swear you didn't pay." When she reached Navy Yard, the building lobby smelled faintly of citrus cleaner. The concierge nodded, as if today was just another day. Inside the condo, the quiet hit different. It didn't feel lonely. It felt safe. She looked at the closet Enzo had threatened to claim and realized she could breathe again. In the kitchen, she filled the kettle and put it on the stove. The small routine steadied her more than any speech. While the water warmed, she sent one short email to her building manager confirming Enzo was no longer authorized on the unit. Then she closed the laptop. When the kettle whistled, she poured hot water over a tea bag and watched the color bloom, dark and honest. She cut a slice of cake vanilla with lemon, simple and bright, and ate slowly at the table, listening to the rain fade against the windows. For the first time in months, her shoulders dropped. Not because she'd won a fight, but because she'd reclaimed her name, her home, and her future quietly, legally, completely without apology either. Because the lesson wasn't that men betray. The lesson was simpler, colder, and more useful. Document your life, protect your peace, and never confuse someone's volume for their power. If you've stayed with Jada to the end, subscribe so you don't miss the next story coming soon. Tap like to support the channel, and drop a comment. Was Jada right to let the truth hit that hard? Or did she go too far? And tell me what time it is where you are, and what city you're watching from. Before you go, click one of the videos on the end screen. There's another life story waiting for you.